Good day to you, beloved. This is the Remnant Seed Bible Study channel. Welcome. Today's subject is the covenant of two princes. I want to talk about the 70th week and the 70 weeks prophecy of Daniel. I want to show you the difference between these two princes that are mentioned in Daniel 9, 25, 26, and 27 to show you who's who in this last 70, this 70th week. We're still in the 69th week. We've been there for over 2,000 years. And the 70th week is still yet in our future. So I want to show you exactly what's going on here and how the mainstream Christian world is misteaching this last 70th week. They're completely missing the boat, and I'm going to show you how they're missing the boat. Now, much of Christianity is making a common mistake of confusing the two princes in Daniel 9:25 and Daniel 9:26. The first prince is Jesus the Messiah, and it states it's really easy, Messiah the Prince. I mean, it has the article and everything there. This is Jesus Christ, no doubt about it. And the second is the Antichrist or the false Messiah. That's why the King James translators put the second prince in lower cap. They caught it. Okay, now there's many of the rapture apologists refer to a 7-year covenant between the Israelites and Messiah at the beginning of the 70 week. They talk about this all the time. When in reality, the covenant being spoken of here is made with Satan, the Antichrist, and his people. This covenant is not between Christ and his people. This is the covenant made between Antichrist and his people. This is the false Messiah. This is the time he'll be on the earth, and he will have already made a covenant with these people. And beloved, all you have to do is look around today. A lot of these people have sold their soul to the devil. And they just, when he arrives on the earth as Christ, they're just going to promote him as Christ. Even though most of these devil worshipers, they know what's going on. They know this is the false Messiah. The word prince is used to describe the title of both Messiah and Satan, or Antichrist. And it's the Hebrew word nagid, means ruler or prince. And beloved, this is so important. Don't confuse the entity with the title of that said entity. A prince is used as a pronoun in a description of a title. And I want to make it clear that in both the prince, Jesus the Messiah, the prince, and the prince, the false Messiah, the word is the same in both of these, and you have to look at it within the context of the verse to decide which one gets the capitalization of the word prince, and why one receives the lowercase. It's because one is the prince of the prince of princes, the King of kings, is Christ, and the other is the false Christ. And this is a play on the word Antichrist. And it's kind of like God's testing you on this to see if you know who the difference is between the two. And this follows through in 2 Thessalonians 2. It explains what this Antichrist does. He stands in a holy place and claims to be God. And this is what Daniel 9:25 is speaking about in 26 and 27. They're referring to this time that the Antichrist stands in a holy place and claims to be God. It's exactly what's being spoken of here. Now let's read Daniel 9:25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince, see that? All caps there, Messiah and the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And the street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. So I'm not going to go into, I'm going to keep this strictly to the 70th week, and I'm not going to go and explain this here. I've already done a video on the numbered days of Daniel, and you can see all of this on that video. I'm concentrating on the 70th week here, so we'll stick to the subject here. Now, let's go to Daniel 9:26, and this is very important. This is something you have to notice in this verse. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. This simply means that this is Messiah being crucified. Okay? Now, we go to a change in subjects right here, right in the middle of the verse. It's right in the middle of the verse, and this could catch a lot of people and throw a lot of people off. But you see that colon right there, but not for himself after that? There's a colon. And this carries through, and the Hebrew carries this through. The translators were just bringing through the translation from the Hebrew by placing a colon here. Because this is a new thought here. Even though it's not capitalized and it's right in the middle of the verse, this is a new thought. And the subject changes from this Messiah, the one with a capital letter, the Messiah, the Prince, changes to, and the people of the Prince, lowercase, which is a reference to the Antichrist, beloved. I mean, even the King James translators caught this. Okay, and let's just read the whole thing here. And the people of the Prince, Antichrist, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with the flood unto the end of the war, desolations determined. And we know this flood is a flood of lies, and this is all about deception. And the Antichrist, by standing in the holy place, claiming to be God, basically is destroying everything about the temple. And this is what this is speaking of. And the flood is a flood of lies. And the Antichrist is called the abomination of desolation, or the desolator, as Moffat translates it. The abomination of desolation is none other than Satan, and don't let anybody tell you that. And it's him standing in the holy place claiming to be God. And these verses are referring to that period of time, beloved. Now notice the words, but not for himself. There is a colon, a stop, and then it goes on to say the people of the Prince. And beloved, you cannot lose sight of this fact. The subject and the object changes here from Jesus the Prince Messiah to the Prince the Antichrist. And again, the King James translators caught this, and rightfully so. Okay, now these two princes are not one and the same. The first one in verse 25 is referring to Christ, and the second one's referring to the Antichrist, the little horn. The covenant was made with Satan and not Jesus Christ. A covenant made with Yahweh or Yahavah cannot be broken by him under any circumstances. So all this nonsense about a covenant between Christ and Messiah, Jesus the Messiah, and the Israelites at the time of the 70th week is erroneous. They're mixing up the two princes, beloved, and they're not rightly dividing the word of God. And they're claiming that both of these princes are one and the same. I could tell you that Christ would not destroy his own sanctuary, okay? It's just not going to happen. Not going to do it. The one who destroys it is the Antichrist by standing there in the holy place claiming to be God. That's what's he's desecrating it. Okay, now if you just look around today, you could see these people, they've basically sold their soul to the devil, and this is the covenant that's being talked about. And you could see it in the world today, how the two sides are lining up, good and evil. We're not talking about politics, we're talking about good and evil. We're talking about the people of the Prince who've made a covenant with the devil, and we're talking about the people of Messiah the Prince who have made a covenant with Yahweh, the one and only true God. Now let's go to Daniel 9:27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and this is the last week. This is the 70th week. This is the one the Christians claim is made with Christ. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Now this means in the middle of the week, which is 3.5 years, he will cause your worship of Yahweh to cease, because Many people will believe that the Antichrist is the real Christ at this time. So when they take a sacrifice and oblation to the Antichrist, their sacrifice and oblation to the real Christ will cease. And for that reason, right there, it's plain as day why this happens. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So this has already been determined by God. He's going to destroy the devil. He's going to destroy all the works of the devil, and that's what this is saying right here. And beloved, make no mistake, Daniel 9:27 is speaking about a covenant between the devil and his people, not Israel and Christ. And then this is just a grievous error here to mix up this covenant with the Antichrist and the true Christ. And this is exactly what the devil wants, is the confusion on this subject, which is what we have today. Many people misinterpret this, and it throws them off. Now, the last week in this prophecy was never 7 years, but it's shortened to 3.5 years. And then in Mark 13:20, it talks about how this time of 3.5 years is shortened to 5 months in Revelation 9:5 and 10. And this gets rather complicated. You don't know what's shortened to what shortened, and how long this last period is. And this is basically going to be the time of Jacob's trouble and the Great Tribulation. And I'm going to keep my mind open as to the length of how long this lasts. But for right now, I'm going to go with 5 months. And I think this 5 months is going to be cut in half itself, going to be 2.5 months. And that will be the time the Antichrist is here on the earth claiming to be God. For 2.5 months, he's going to have to deceive the whole world. And if it were possible, even the elect would be fooled if the time wasn't shortened, beloved. It's very important to focus on the subject and the object of these verses. The word he is referring to the Antichrist and not Christ. This is where many go wrong interpreting these verses. Verse 26 changes subject matter in the middle of the verse, and the subject is he, the prince Antichrist, until the end of the chapter. A colon or a pause or a selah can change the entire meaning of a verse, and even in the original manuscripts. And you must keep this in mind. The King James translators tried to carry all of this, the pauses, the commas, the colons, all of that. They tried to carry it through and bring it through so that we could understand it in the English. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And the devil will make a covenant with his people for 7 years. This is basically what that's saying. And in the midst of, meaning in the middle of 3.5 years. The last week of Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy was never 7 years. Just like the 70 weeks was never actually 70 weeks. The actual time has been shortened from 3.5 years to 5 months, and Mark 13:20 is describing the time period of the last week in Daniel's prophecy being shortened from 3.5 years to 5 months. The 3.5 year time period has been established, so why do false teachers claim the last week of Daniel's prophecy to be 7 years? I just don't know, beloved. Apparently they forgot to read the words in the midst of the 7 year period, and it simply means in the middle of. When the number 7 is used, you must always keep in mind that much of the time it's not a literal 7. 7 means spiritual completeness or perfect timing, all in God's timing. Rapture apologists seem to forget Mark 13:20 and the time being shortened, but worse yet, they all believe they will be gone before Jacob's trouble in a flyaway fairy tale called the rapture. The last week of Daniel's prophecy is 5 months, and you can find this time period mentioned in Revelation 9:5 and 9:10. It's the time of the locust and the locust army. So, beloved, I'm going to go into some of the technical issues and antecedent and transitive verbs and the instructions, basic instructions on how to read any book, any novel. And if you don't apply these basic instructions of reading to the Bible, you're going to be completely lost, okay? And there's no other way around this. So let's get into this technical issue here. And I'm going to repeat stuff. I do that all the time in my videos to bring points across, to drill it in your head, beloved. I guess I do that because that's what I need. I need stuff drilled into my head. I'm kind of hard-headed. All right, the two princes are not one and the same, and this is a fatal mistake. An antecedent or a transitive verb can only be used if the subject matter continues. If your interpretation is erroneous, then the use of the Hebrew linguistic protocol is useless. If you can't follow subject and object, you will be lost no matter what you do. And it'd be useless in any language, okay, if you misinterpret what you're reading. For instance, if you read, and we all remember, if you're old like me, you remember the book Dick and Jane. And if you read it in the English language and you have a degree in English but fail to understand the storyline, what good is your degree? And that, beloved, that's rather painful, but most of these people with PhDs have had all their common sense educated right out of their brain. There's no room for education and common sense, so one's got to go. So what do? They get rid of their common sense. Messiah, the prince, is used in verse 25, and prince is used in verse 26, are obviously not the same in the English or the Hebrew. One has Messiah first and foremost, and the other doesn't. In verse 25, we have an antecedent, which is Messiah the Prince, which continues through until the middle of the 26th verse. And a new subject, an antecedent, begins with the words, the people of the prince. So the rest of the chapter refers back to the word prince by referring to the prince as he. And this is the classic definition of an antecedent. Or you could, it's a transitive noun, transitive verb. It transfers from the original time it was mentioned until the subject is definitely changed. And you, the reader, must determine when the subject matter changes to apply an antecedent to what you're reading. And you can't misapply or misapplicate an antecedent. Otherwise, you're going to be completely lost and you're going to be misapplying it. And you're going to be violating all of the protocol of reading the Hebrew or the English or any language for that matter. Now here we got the word prince, and it's 5057. It's not a leader. You can see it's literally just a prince or a ruler. It's a title. It's not the entity. The entity itself. Now, all the verses below are reference to the Antichrist as the prince of his people. Him, his, and he are used in many times, all referring to the Antichrist. And I won't go over these, beloved, but there's 4 of them here, and they're using this word covenant. The prince of the covenant, and then it goes on to say the holy covenant. Now, there's only one holy covenant, beloved. And you know, it's really plain as day what that's saying there. The people of God will be strong in the power of his might. The devil will flatter those who follow him by promising them the world just as he did Christ in the wilderness. And are you going to fall for this deceitful character called the Antichrist? Beloved, I'm trying to warn you and show you that the Bible is warning you throughout the Bible. It's giving you a warning of who this prince of this covenant is. It's the Antichrist. He comes claiming to be Christ. He comes and claims to have his own covenant. Okay? Oh boy, and you cannot. It's a fatal mistake when you confuse these two covenants. Beloved, this is just so wrong on so many levels. I mean, if you're confusing these two covenants, you need to have your teaching credentials revoked. I'm sorry. Okay, now, who is it that is broken? The prince, and not Messiah the prince. And this is key to understanding, beloved, at the end of Daniel 27, 9:27, which Antichrist in the Greek means instead of Christ or fake Christ. Are you able to distinguish between the two? And that's what this 70th week will be. The time of Jacob's trouble will be a testing like never before. And it's the time of the hour of temptation. You will be tested which prince you are loyal to. And if you are loyal to the small prince, the Antichrist, you will have received the mark of the beast. And that's what this is all about. This Daniel and the angel Gabriel, they're trying to warn you of this guy that's going to come disguised as a prince. And they kind of hid this a little bit in the word. But if you're bright enough to pick up on this and figure this out, and this is the part of the deception. This guy comes in, and this is why I believe this is interpreted this way. They're really similar, but when you look at them in the Hebrew, you see that this is a completely different covenant. This is not a covenant being made with the true prince, the Messiah. Your covenant, if you have it with Christ, has already been made. Once you got saved, you've already made a covenant with Christ. All you have to do is repent and hold on to it. There's not some new covenant made with the Christ at this time. It's just unreal what they do with this. They just completely take it out of context. All right, so that's kind of my presentation here. Now I want to read Bullinger's account of this, and I'm in agreement with him on this. Now the last, or 1/7 of years, is divided into two distinct equal parts, and the division takes place in connection with an event which has no connection whatever with any event which has yet taken place. In other words, this hasn't happened. This is still yet future. Messiah did not make a covenant or the covenant of any kind, either with Israel or with anyone else at the end of or after the 69th week, nor did he break any covenant 3.5 years later. Man may make and break covenants, but divine covenants are never broken. On the other hand, the prince that shall come, it is distinctly stated that he shall do both these very things, as verses 26 and 27 says. He'll destroy the sanctuary and come in and defile everything. And you can find this in Appendix 89 and 90. Both are connected with the time of the end. Hence, we are forced to the conclusion that this last 7 years still awaits its fulfillment, and this fulfillment must be as literal and complete as that of all the other parts of this vision and prophecy. For the end must be the glorious consummation for Israel, of verse 24, the complete destruction of the coming prince, the small prince, and the false Messiah or Antichrist, and the setting up of Messiah's kingdom. See, Bullinger points this out, the difference between the two. It's the destruction of the small prince and the setting up of the real prince's or Messiah's kingdom. It's a big difference between these two. They're not the same. Nothing less will satisfy all the requirements of Daniel's vision of the 70 weeks. And the Hebrew word rendered week is shabuah, and it means simply a septad, a heblomad, or a 7, hence a week, because it is a 7 of days. But in this passage, it is confessedly used of a 7 of years, and this of necessity. For no other 7 of any other portion of time will satisfy the prophecy and fall within its terminus a quo and the terminus ad quem. 70 of these sevens of years, or 490 years, are the one subject of this prophecy. We are told exactly when they would commence and how they were to end. They sum up within their bounds all the then counsels of God as to his future dealings with his people, Israel. For they are determined, this has been ordained. The angel said to Daniel, upon thy people and upon thy holy city, verse 24, these words cannot have any other interpretation than all Israel, verse 7, and Jerusalem and the holy sanctuary. For that had been the subject of Daniel's prayer, to which this prophecy was set as the specific answer. And see the verses 2, 16, 17, 18, 19, especially verse 24. And so here are the 4 verses again, and here's your Nagid, number 57. And beloved, so here we come to the end of this lecture. And just to conclude, beloved, don't let anybody tell you that these two princes are different, are the same. These two princes, one is the Prince of Princes, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and the other is the fake prince. Okay? And this is all hidden to the English reader. It's really hard to catch this unless you look at it in the Hebrew. But it does partly carry through in the English if you stick to the subject and object. But you can really get deceived on this one. There was never a covenant made with Jesus Christ or Israel, anything during the end. When you are saved through Christ, your covenant has been made. It's up to you to keep it. God will never break that covenant. That covenant stands forever. It's unbreakable. And so the only covenant made in the end times is with the devil. And beloved, just look around the world today. It's going to hell in a handbasket. And the world right now is preparing for the Antichrist, preparing for his entrance by bringing this old world into a new world order to accept the Antichrist. And that's what the 70th week is all about of Daniel's prophecy. So that's the end of this lecture, beloved. Much love from me to you, and we'll see you on the next one.